everybody, welcome to this summary of post-COP27. I am Lapierre from the Ocean Rose Fulbright. I am the global head of energy, and as every year, the team had the chance and the pleasure to follow up the developments of the COP negotiation this year in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. So that was an African COP, which was meant to be an implementation COP following Glasgow, where a certain number of pledges has been made. And the question is, did that happen? Was that a successful COP? Were the agreement reached in line with the expectation? Some say yes, some say no. Let's share with you what is the Northern Rose Fulbright team vision on this. After sharing some thoughts on the big picture, I will pass on the mic to Tina Costa, you can see on the screen. Tina is from our Durban office, and we need a learned vision on what this COP achieved for South Africa. Our firm was indeed sponsoring this year the South African Pavilion, so our partners had the chance to follow closely the developments down there, together with the ministers and the governments, and have an insight on what the agreement which has been reached mean for South Africa. So on the global picture, despite an unfavorable macroeconomical conditions, obviously there is the war, there is the price of power, insecurity in the global markets. It is fair to say that there was a massive attendance, more than 35,000 attendees at COP, which probably makes it one of the more meaning COPs in terms of size. And what is also noticeable is that there was a number of side events which were absolutely exceeding what we see normally, with a lot of quality and a lot of discussion on the side of the negotiation of COP. Before even coming into COP, we knew that the first discussion would be actually on financing and how developing countries could benefit from loss and damage compensation. For the first time, that was last minute, but eventually that was put on the agenda of this COP. That was the first time, despite the fact that it was been pressing for a long period of time. So in that regard, this line on the agenda was already one win, a very strong win. And we were a little bit worried because until the last minute, after 2 weeks of marathon negotiation, there was no agreement reached at COP, and the discussions were extended for almost 2 days. At the end of the day, there is this very important agreement that a fund is going to be created to indemnify the developing countries when they actually suffer from climate change damage. So all of the principle is not agreed upon, and obviously we will need to have some further discussion in order to see how this fund is actually contributed to, who is actually contributed to, and how the money is actually accessed to. But there was a very, very strong commitment while COP was going on, also from President Macron, which actually had joined G20, which was actually happening in Bali at the same moment than COP, where it was reiterated this commitment to actually amend the way the International Monetary Fund money can be accessible to indemnify the prejudice deriving from climate change. And President Macron called for a very big conference in June 2023 in Paris in order to set up the new rules that should actually rule the global financing, and in particular the decarbonization of the economy, and ensure that there is access to public money in a way which makes more secure investment from private money, and allow for a massive investment to transition towards a cleaner economy. That was also interesting in that regard to hear that Joe Biden thought that all of the MDBs, so the development banks, had all of them to be restructured in order also to have a more accessible money and helping more private money to invest, i.e. to take more risk from the public side to ensure that there is private investment. we're talking about 8 trillion of investment per annum. That's the figures that has been agreed upon for the planet, not to exceed the temperature of 1.5 degrees. So we'll see how it develops. But it is obviously, first of all, very, very interesting to hear from you, Tina. What is your vision on the agreement we talked at COP in terms of loss and damages and other discussions? Tina?
Thanks, Anne. And hi, everyone. I'm Tina, Head of the Environment and Sustainability at Norton Rose, Fulbright, South Africa. And as Anne said, we had a team on the ground at the SA Pavilion, which was really successful to engage with the parties that were there and talk about what was happening on the ground. I think from the definitely on the loss and damage is a positive. It was one of the big positive takeaways for Africa and South Africa. It's been sort of talked about for today. The Minister of Environmental Affairs referred to it as a 30-year-long battle. And so the establishment and setting up the fund on loss and damage was a big hurdle and a big success, I think, and definitely one of the positives. There's also been a transitional committee set up to work on that fund. We foresee obviously a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of perhaps the sources and the beneficiaries, but the loss and damage fund is definitely a positive for Africa and South Africa. So that's the positive. I mean, another positive obviously was the presentation of the JETIP, so the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which was presented at COP. It was well received in terms of how it's a 5-year plan on South Africa intends to decarbonize. It's set on financial principles to ensure that we reach this just transition, and sets up the funding requirements, and you spoke of the costs, and that amounts to really over 5 years for South Africa an amount of $100 million. So we're talking about hundreds and trillions, as you said, to decarbonize the entire planet, and South Africa has that amount set out for it in terms of decarbonizing its economy over the next 5 years. The possible, I think, negative, which is really linked to loss and damage on a South Africa and Africa perspective, was the adaptation. There was hope that a framework would be reached to identify targets and indicators to measure success and progress on that. We understand that it was really resulted in that more workshops needed to be done. So there was a bit of pushback, I think, from the developed countries on the adaptation, and something which South Africa specifically wanted to focus on, bearing in mind that controlling adaptation then results in less loss and damage. So if we control adaptation to a point and deal with that, it will really result in the less loss and damage.
That's very interesting. And so indeed, the COP actually, at the end of the day, saved the 1.5 degree. There is an agreement that the huge financing is required, which we already knew, but now there are some commitment to actually discuss that. So we're getting prepared at the Norton Rose Fulbright team for Dubai, which is going to be the next COP. And obviously the location is going to be very important, because there is a need of transitioning from oil and gas industries to cleaner economy for this part of the world. So it's going to be a very, very important and interesting COP. Of course, as this year, we will be on the ground. If you want more details, please connect to our dedicated COP hub that you will find on our website. You probably will find a link just below this video if you're interested in more detail. Thank you very much.